Rage Badger Gaming here, and we're going to talk about enemy focus and enemy movement today. There's a bit of confusion that I've seen in some of the discussions, so I figured we'd just do a video to clear it up. We have some fun images, and we're going to walk through some of these scenarios, and we're going to go through a little bit of a rules clarification just before we dive into that. So before we do get into that, I'm just going to do another reminder. If you like the video, like, subscribe. It really helps us. And if you think we missed something important, let us know in the comments below. So let's get into the rules. So, number one, monsters always will perform actions as if they're performing a melee attack unless they're performing a ranged attack. This includes summons, heals, throwing a bless in their own monster deck. If that's what they're doing, unless they're doing a ranged attack, they're going to pretend like they're performing a melee attack. This can make them perform a heal action, and then they run right towards you and away from the guy they're supposed to heal. That's okay. That's part of the rules. I know it sounds weird. It's just how it is. Also, disarmed monsters that are performing ranged attacks will perform the term as if they were doing a melee attack. So you can range disarm those archers, and then if they have a move action while they're disarmed, they'll move toward you with their full move. So monsters will only do what's on their card. And I think this is one of the things that a little bit of the newer folk get wrong more than others. So, like, you'll draw the bandit card in the first room, and they say, oh yeah, shield and retaliate. And then, not only will they give them shield and retaliate, but they'll have them do their move and attack action too. Wow. And that's such a powerful card if that's the case. But in the case they draw that, they're just not moving and they're not swinging, which is great. So, unless the card says move, don't move. Unless the card says attack, don't attack. Monsters are going to move towards the player that requires the least amount of movement to get to them. That's not always about proximity. So sometimes you'll have a character that's just 2 hexes away and one that's 4 hexes away. But that guy 2 hexes is surrounded by rubble, traps, and obstacles. And turns out it takes 5 hexes to get to them, and it's 4 to get to the other. So they'll skip that close guy to go to the further away guy. It's all about movement. It's not about range. Monsters will only find valid paths initially through the first check by ignoring traps and ignoring hazardous terrain. But the first thing they want to check is, can I get to something? Ignoring all traps and ignoring all hazards. They're going to go to that person first, and the closest one out of all those, which may seem weird, but that's the first thing. And this can prevent them from even attacking on that turn. They don't care. They're going to avoid those traps so they maybe eventually get to it. Pretend that they had infinite movement and figure out where they're moving. Monsters can choose not to focus. Now, this only happens if they cannot possibly find a path. So the second pass they do is, alright, I give up. Can I step through traps or hazardous terrain to find a focus? Sure, then they'll finally do it. But what if monsters can't get any path? And this usually happens because of obstacles, invisible characters standing in a door, or some guy backed into a corner and the enemies have already surrounded him and there's no other hexes for them to perform a melee attack. If a monster can't find a focus for any of these reasons, they do not perform any moves on their card, they do not perform any attacks on their card. They'll still do the rest of them. So if they're saying, hey, heal 3, they will perform the heal action. So sadly, it doesn't kind of remove everything, but if you can prevent enemies from getting a focus, they'll skip all the moves and all the attacks. Even if moving will help them out in a further turn than getting them closer, they can't get a focus, they just get confused and stand there. Monsters that target multiple targets will attempt to optimize their attack. So if you're right adjacent to a living bones that has target 2, typically a monster will only move the minimum amount of hexes, which can be 0. But if he moves 1 hex and he's able to attack a second target, he will do that. Keep in mind, monsters trying to optimize their attack will not voluntarily step into traps or hazards. Likewise, ranged opponents will attempt to back up to try to attack from a space that doesn't give them disadvantage if they start performing a ranged attack with a movement before it where they would have disadvantage from shooting their focus. Likewise, ranged opponents won't step into a hex to optimize a multi-ranged attack where they would get disadvantage on their focus. Last but not least, monsters that are stunned don't burn elements. They don't suffer really those annoying things. So if you stun an ooze that's about to split, they don't suffer the 2 damage. And they don't generate elements either. So now, of course, if you're fighting 2 flame demons and they're empowering fire, and you stun one of them, the other one will still empower fire. But if you stun all of them, doesn't happen. So just keep in mind, if the monster is stunned, ignore everything on the card. This includes shields, retaliates, heals, everything. They don't do any of it. So let's dig into some of these scenarios. If you see here, you've got a Living Bones. The Living Bones is right next to that Cragheart. Only one movement it takes to actually get to him. However, because his little that little trap there in that rubble, it'll actually take him 5 hexes to get to that hex right there. Whereas that Tinkerer, he could get to it in 4 hexes. You can see on his movement card he's got this turn that he has move +1 and attack -1. So he could move 4 hexes this turn. He can make it to either of these 2 hexes and still attack the Tinkerer. Even though the Tinkerer is further away, he'll focus the Tinkerer and not the Cragheart, just because that trap is there. In this scenario, you can see that a Living Corpse is about to do a move 1, attack 4. However, the Brute and the Tinkerer are equidistant from him. Who's he going to target? He's going to target, in this case, the Brute, because the Brute's initiative is lower. You can see a Shield Bash, his leading card, allows him to go at initiative 15, whereas the Toxic Bolt from the Tinkerer goes at 18. With the Shield Bash up, he has Shield 1, so the Living Corpse will go to him and hit him with reduced damage because of the Shield Bash. Good play, Brute. In this scenario, the Living Corpses are going to do a Hasty Assault at initiative 47. They're going to move 2 hexes before attacking this turn. In this case, the Elite Living Corpse, because Elites always go first, will move on to the trap because it's the only way he's going to get a focus. That clever Tinkerer placing that trap on the door means that those monsters will step onto it before they get to them. So he's going to move and step on the trap and then attack the Brute. The other one, however, cannot take its full movement of 2, but will eventually be able to end a space next to the Tinkerer or the Brute. So he's going to move into this hex to get just a little bit closer, because given infinite movement, he'll eventually find a new hex after the Elite Living Corpse has taken its turn. In this scenario, the Night Demons are going to go at initiative 22 and the Cultists at initiative 27. You can see the Night Demon will have this hex, and that will be available to attack the Brute. However, once Cultist 2 activates, he's going to step into that 3 damage trap because it's the only way he can get to his target. However, that will kill him in the process. That's a sacrifice he's willing to make. At that point, Cultist 4 will be able to take his turn and attack the Brute with no problem. He's already adjacent, so he will not move at all. In this scenario, the Tinkerer is taking a long rest, and the Brute is doing a Leaping Cleave at 54. So the first thing that happens is the Frost Demons go at 38. However, you can see that the Tinkerer taking a long rest on the door is invisible. They cannot focus the Tinkerer because enemies will not focus an invisible target. They can only focus the Brute. However, they can't, because given infinite movement and the fact they cannot fly or jump, they will never be able to get closer to him. They won't do a move at all. They will not perform an attack. They're not going to try to get closer or crowd around the door to eventually get the Brute, because given infinite movement, they will never make it to the Brute. And that's because the invisible Tinkerer is blocking them. So at 38, the Frost Demons do not move and they do not attack. On the other hand, the Brute will perform his action at 54, jumping and cleaving both of those Frost Demons. The Frost Demons have a passive retaliate of 1, as you can see above their standee, so the Brute will still take it. However, after he performs his action, the Living Bones at initiative 64 will then attack the Brute. He will not optimize to try to attack a second target, because he cannot focus an invisible enemy, the Tinkerer, even though he has the movement to attack both the Tinkerer and the Brute on this turn. Invisibility is quite powerful as a result. In this scenario, you can see that the Brute has activated Shield Bash and Eye for an Eye this turn. He's got a nice powerful Retaliate and a shield. The cool part is, the Tinkerer is all the way over there, so those enemies, first Bandit 1 will go into this hex or this hex, as both of them are equidistant. It's your choice. If you pick him here, the other enemy, Bandit 4, will step in simply into the other hex. Even though Bandit 4 could take the opportunity at this point to go to either the Tinkerer or the Brute, because they're both equidistant. Because the Brute's initiative is lower, he will go to the Brute, and that'll stop Bandit 6 from attacking the Brute at all, or the Tinkerer, which is interesting because, again, If the bandits were smart, 4 would go to the Tinkerer and 1 and 6 would team up on the Brute, but that's not the way it plays out. 1 and 4 will both go to those 2 adjacent hexes highlighted here and attack the Brute, and 6 will try to get close to the Tinkerer, not to the Brute, since given infinite movement there is now no longer a way for him to reach the Brute. However, he will fall 1 hex shy of the Tinkerer and won't make a swing at all. And that's enemy movement. If that helped you out, let us know in the comments below. Give us a like and be sure to subscribe. We have a lot of videos and we have live plays that come out every Tuesday and Thursday. And if you really like us, check out our Patreon. We'll have our schedule posted for you to see what's coming up, and you can vote on what mercenaries we're going to be covering in our deep dive series. So I really hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.